Well, if we get an image at all, that would be great.
Well, there's a bit of an image, I see. Only the mothership is doing its thing right now.
Yeah, whether if that's true, if because I could see an image before as well,
I
but
have I have
Lucia
image
couldn't
on
see us.
everything right now.
All right.
Still glitch sometimes, but hello! Welcome to take two of Cats and Coffee, the show where everything goes wrong.
Today
It seems
the
like my internet connection is acting up a bit.
mm, the
Oh,
internet is just tired.
yeah, well, so are we,
Yeah,
so
the mothership just wore out the internet,
definitely mothership, yeah.
chased it. Mm.
So we're gonna see if this works for today. um,
As long as the audio works, then we can hear stories.
yeah, that's correct. I mean, if the audio works, it should be okay. And right now, it seems like the audio is working. So, yeah,
That's a good thing.
let's see what's going on.
Yes,
Does,
we
however,
have another collection of stories. And last time we ended at the story of the man who did not wish to die. So that means that today we're starting with the bamboo cutter and the moonchild.
oh, good luck and have fun.
Thank you. Long, long ago, there lived an old bamboo woodcutter. He was very poor and sad also, for no child had heaven sent to cheer his old age. And in his heart there was no hope of rest from work till he died and was laid in a quiet grave. Every morning he went forth into the woods and hills, wherever the bamboo reared the light green plumes against the sky. When he had made his choice, he would cut down these feathers of the forest and splitting them lengthwise, or cutting them into joints, would carry the bamboo wood home and make into various articles for the household, and he and his old wife gained a small livelihood by selling them. One morning, as usual, he had gone out to his work, and having found a nice clump of bamboos, had set to work to cut some of them down. Suddenly the green grove of bamboos was flooded with a bright, soft light, as if the full moon had risen over the spot. Looking round in astonishment, he saw that the brilliance was streaming from one bamboo. The old man, full of wonder, dropped his axe and went towards the light. On nearer approach he saw that this soft splendor came from a hollow in the green bamboo stem, and still more wonderful to behold, in the midst of the brilliance stood a tiny human being, only 3 inches in height, and exquisitely beautiful in appearance.
I think the stream is crapping out a bit.
Yes, but is the sound still working?
I don't know. Dear chat, can you say if the sound is still working, or if there's at least some bit of life?
That would be great if at least we'd have sound today.
Sound
Sound
works.
works. Okay, the sound is sound.
Okay,
I look so spiffy right now.
I don't know what's going on with the stream right now.
Uh,
Well, good luck. Let's go for a
Circle up.
sound only thing, and I'll put something in the title where it says something about sorry for the horrible quality today.
Mm,
You do your thing.
sure. All right, I'll continue. You must be sent to be my child, for I find you here among the bamboos, where lies my daily work, said the old man, and taking the little creature in his hand, he took it home to his wife to bring up. The tiny girl was so exceedingly beautiful and so small that the old woman put her into a basket to safeguard her from the least possibility of being hurt in any way. The old couple were now very happy, for it had been a lifelong regret that they had no children of their own, and with joy they now expended all the love of their old age on the little child who had come to them in so marvelous a manner. From this time on, the old man often found gold in the notches of the bamboos when he hewed them down and cut them up. Not only gold, but precious stones also, so by so that by degree he became rich. He built himself a fine house, and was no longer known as the poor bamboo woodcutter, but as a wealthy man. 3 months passed quickly away, and in that time the bamboo child had, wonderful to say, become a full grown girl. So her foster parents did up her hair and dressed her in beautiful kimonos. She was of such wondrous beauty that they placed her behind the screens like a princess, and allowed no one to see her, waiting upon her themselves. It seemed as if she were made of light, for the house was filled with a soft shining, so that even in the dark of night it was like daytime. Her presence seemed to have a benign influence on those there. Whenever the old man felt sad, he had only to look upon his foster daughter, and his sorrow vanished, and he became as happy as when he was a youth. At last the day came for the naming of their new found child. So the old couple called in a celebrated name giver, and he gave her the name of Princess Moonlight, because her body gave forth so much soft bright light that she might have been a daughter of the moon god. For 3 days the festival was kept up with song and dance and music. All the friends and relations of the old couple were present, and great was their enjoyment of the festivities held to celebrate the naming of Princess Moonlight. Everyone who saw her declared there had there had never been seen anyone so lovely. All the beauties throughout the length and breadth of the land would grow pale beside her, so they said. The fame of the princess' loveliness spread far and wide, and, and many were the suitors who desired to win her hand, or even so much as to see her. Suitors from far and near posted themselves outside the house and made little holes in the fence, in the hope of catching a glimpse of the princess as she went from one room to the other along the veranda. They stayed there day and night, sacrificing even their sleep for a chance of seeing her, but all in vain. Then they approached the house and tried to speak to the old man and his wife, or some of the servants, but not even this was granted them. Still, in spite of all this disappointment, they stayed on, day after day, and night after night, and counted it as nothing, so great was their desire to see the princess. At last, however, most of the men, seeing how hopeless their quest was, lost heart and hope both, and returned to their homes. All except 5 knights, whose ardor and determination, instead of waning, seemed to wax greater with obstacles. These 5 men even went without their meals, and took snatches of whatever they could get brought to them, so that they might always stand outside the dwelling. They stood there in all weathers, in sunshine and in rain. Sometimes they wrote letters to the princess, but no answer was vouchsafed to them. Uh, Then, when letters failed to draw any reply, they wrote poems to telling her of the hopeless love which kept them from sleep, from food, from rest, and even from their homes. Still Princess Moonlight gave no sign of having received the verses. In this hopeless state the winter passed. The snow and frost and the cold winds gradually gave place for the gentle warmth of spring. Then the summer came, and the sun burned white and scorching in the heavens above, the earth beneath, and still these faithful knights kept watch and waited. At the end of these long months they called out to the old bamboo cutter and entreated him to have some mercy upon them and to show them the princess, but he answered only that as he was not her real father, he could not insist on her obeying him against her wishes. The five knights, on receiving this stern answer, returned to their several homes, and pondered over the best means of touching the proud princess's heart, even so much as to grant them a hearing. They took their rosaries in hand and knelt before the household shrines, and burned precious incense, praying to Buddha to give them their heart's desire. Thus several days passed, but even though they could not rest in their homes, even so they could not rest in their homes. So again they set out for the bamboo cutter's house. This time the old man came out to see them, and they asked him to let them know if it was the princess's resolution never to see any man whatsoever, and they implored him to speak for them and to tell her the greatness of their love and how long they had waited through the cold of winter and the heat of summer, sleepless and roofless through all weathers, without food and without rest, in the ardent hope of winning her, and they were willing to consider this long vigil as pleasure if she would but give them one chance of pleading their cause with her. The old man lent a willing ear to their tale of love, for in his inmost heart he felt sorry for these faithful suitors, and would have liked to see his lovely foster daughter married to one of them. So he went in to Princess Moonlight and said reverently, "Although you have always seemed to me to be a heavenly being, yet I have had the trouble of bringing you up as my own child, and you have been glad of the protection of my roof. Will you refuse to do as I wish?" Then Princess Moonlight replied that there was nothing she would not do for him, that she honored and loved him as her own father, and that as for herself she would not remember the time before she came to earth. The old man listened with great joy as she spoke these dutiful words. Then he told her how anxious he was to see her safely and happily married before he died. "I am an old man, over 70 years of age, and my end may come any time now. It is necessary and right that you should see these five suitors and choose one of them." "Oh, why?" said the princess in distress. "Must I do this? I have no wish to marry now." "I found you," answered the old man, "many years ago, when you were a little creature 3 inches high, in the midst of a great white light. The light streamed from the bamboo in which you were hid and led me to you. So I have always thought that you were more than a mortal woman. While I am alive, it is right for you to remain as you are if you wish if you wish to do so. But some day I shall cease to be, and who will take care of you then? Therefore I pray that you will meet these 5 brave men one at a time and make up your mind to marry one of them. Then the princess answered that she felt sure that she was not as beautiful as perhaps report made her out to be, and that even if she consented to marry any one of them, not really knowing her before, his heart might change afterwards. So as she did not feel sure of them, even though her father told her they were worthy knights, she did not feel it was wise to see them. All you say is very reasonable, said the old man, but what kind of men will you consent to see? I do not call these 5 men who have waited on you for months light-hearted. They have stood outside this house through the winter and the summer, often denying themselves food and sleep so that they may win you. What more can you demand? Then Princess Moonlight said she must make further trial of their love before she would grant their request to interview her. The 5 warriors were to prove their love by each bringing her from distant countries something that she desired to possess. That same evening the suitors arrived and began to play their flutes in turn, and to sing their self-composed songs telling of their great and tireless love. The bamboo cutter went out to them and offered them his sympathy for all they had endured, and all the patience they had shown in their desire to win his foster daughter. He then gave them her message, that she would consent to marry whosoever was successful in bringing her what she wanted. This was to test them. The 5 all accepted the trial, and though it was an excellent plan, for it would prevent jealousy between them. Princess Moonlight then sent word to the first knight that she requested him to bring her the stone bowl which had belonged to Buddha in India. The second knight was asked to go to the mountain of Horai, said to be situated in the eastern sea, and to bring her a branch of the wonderful tree that grew on its summit. The roots of this tree were of silver, the trunk of gold, and the branches bore as fruit white jewels. The third knight was told to go to China and search for the fire rat and to bring her its skin. The fourth knight was told to search the dragon that carried on its head the stone radiating 5 colors, and to bring the stone to her. The fifth knight was to find the swallow which carried a shell in its stomach, and to bring the shell to her. The old man thought these very hard tasks, and hesitated to carry the messages, but the princess would make no other conditions. So her commands were issued word for word to the 5 men who, when they heard what was required of them, were all disheartened and disgusted at what seemed to them the impossibility of the tasks given them, and returned to their own homes in despair. But after a time, when they thought of the princess, the love in their hearts revived for her, and they resolved to make an attempt to get what she desired of them. The first knight sent word to the princess that he was starting out that day on the quest of Buddha's bowl, and he hoped soon to bring it to her. But he had not the courage to go all the way to India, for in those days traveling was very difficult and full of danger. So he went to one of the temples in Kyoto and took a stone bowl from the altar there, paying the priest a large sum of money for it. He then wrapped it in a cloth of gold and, waiting quietly for 3 years, returned and carried it to the old man. Princess Moonlight wondered that the knight should have returned so soon. She took the bowl from its gold wrapping, expecting it to make the room full of light, but it did not shine at all. So she knew that it was a sham thing and not the true bowl of Buddha. She returned it at once and refused to see him. The knight threw the bowl away and returned to his home in despair. He gave up now all hopes of ever winning the princess. The second knight told his parents that he needed change of air for his health, for he was ashamed to tell them that love for the Princess Moonlight was the real cause of his leaving them. He then left his home, at the same time sending word to the princess that he was setting out for Mount Horai in the hope of getting her a branch of the gold and silver tree which she so much wished to have. He only allowed his servants to accompany him halfway and then sent them back. He reached the seashore and embarked on a small ship, and after sailing away for 3 days, he landed and employed several carpenters to build him a house contrived in such a way that no one could get access to it. He then shut himself up with 6 skilled jewelers, and endeavored to make such a gold and silver branch as he thought would satisfy the princess as having come from the wonderful tree growing on Mount Horai. Every one whom he had asked declared that Mount Horai belonged to the land of fable and not to fact. When the branch was finished, he took his journey home and tried to make himself look as if he were wearied and worn out with travel. He put the jeweled branch into a lacquer box and carried it to the bamboo cutter, begging him to present it to the princess. The old man was quite deceived by the travel-stained appearance of the knight, and thought that he had just returned from his long journey with the branch. So he tried to persuade the princess to consent to see the man, but she remained silent and looked very sad. The old man began to take out the branch and praise it as a wonderful treasure to be found nowhere in the whole land. Then he spoke of the knight, how handsome and how brave he was to have undertaken a journey to so remote a place as the Mount of Horai. Princess Moonlight took the branch in her hand and looked at it carefully. She then told her foster parent that she knew it was impossible for the man to have obtained a branch from the gold and silver tree growing on Mount Horai so quickly or so easily, and she was sorry to say she believed it artificial. The old man then went out to the expectant knight, who had now approached the house, and asked where he had found the branch. Then the man did not scruple to make up a long story. 2 years ago I took a ship and started in search of Mount Horai. After going before the wind for some time, I reached the far eastern sea. Then a great storm arose, and I was tossed about for many days, losing all count of the points of the compass. And finally we were blown ashore on an unknown island. Here I found the place inhabited by demons who at one time threatened to kill and to eat me. However, I managed to make friends with these horrible creatures, and they helped me and my sailors to repair the boat, and I set sail again. Our food gave out, and we suffered much from sickness on board. At last, on the 500th day on the, from the day of starting, I saw far off on the horizon what looked like a peak of a mountain. On nearer approach, this proved to be an island, in the center of which rose a high mountain. I landed And after wandering about for 2 or 3 days, I saw a shiny being coming towards me on the beach, holding in his hand a golden bowl. I went up to him and asked if I had, by good chance, found the island of Mount Horai. And he answered, "Yes, this is Mount Horai." With much difficulty I climbed the summit. Here stood the golden tree growing with silver roots in the ground. The wonders of that strange land are many, and if I began to tell you about them, I could never stop. In spite of my wish to stay there long, on breaking off the branch, I hurried back. With utmost speed, it has taken me 400 days to get back, and as you see, my clothes are still damp from exposure on the long sea voyage. I have not even waited to change my raiment, so anxious was I to bring the branch to the princess quickly. Just at this moment, the 6 jewelers, who had been employed on the making of the branch, but not yet paid by the knight, arrived at the house and sent in a petition to the princess to be paid for their labor. They said that they had worked for over 1,000 days making the branch of gold with its silver twigs and its jeweled fruit that was now presented to her by the knight, but as yet they had received nothing in payment. So this knight's deception was thus found out, and the princess, glad of an escape from one more imp- importunate suitor, was only too pleased to send back the branch. She called in the workmen and had them paid liberally, and they went away happy. But on the way home they were overtaken by the disappointed man, who beat them till they were nearly dead for letting out the secret, and they barely escaped with their lives. The knight then returned home, raging in his heart, and in despair of ever winning the princess, gave up society and retired to a solitary life among the mountains. Now the third knight had a friend in China, so he wrote to him to get the skin of the fire rat. The virtue of any part of this animal was that no fire could harm it. He promised his friend any amount of money he liked to ask if only he could get him the desired article. As soon as the news came that the ship on which his friend had sailed home had come in port, he rode 7 days on horseback to meet him. He handed his friend a large sum of money and received the fire rat's skin. When he reached home, he put it carefully in a box and sent it to the princess while he waited outside for her answer. The bamboo cutter took the box from the knight and, as usual, carried it in to her and tried to coax her to see the knight at once. But the Princess Moonlight refused, saying that she must first put the skin to test by putting it into the fire. If it were the real thing, it would not burn. So she took off the crepe wrapper and opened the box, and then threw the skin into the fire. The skin crackled and burnt up at once, and the princess knew that this man also had not fulfilled his word. So the third night failed also. Now the fourth night was no more enterprising than the rest. Instead of starting out on the quest of the dragon bearing on its head the five-color radiating jewel, he called all his servants together and gave them the order to seek for it far and wide in Japan and in China, and he strictly forbade any of them to return till they had found it. His numerous retainers and servants started out in different directions with no intention, however, of obeying what they considered an impossible order. They simply took a holiday, went to a pleasant country place together, and grumbled at their master's unreasonableness. The knight, meanwhile, thinking that his retainers could not fail to find the jewel, repaired to his house and fitted it up beautiful for the reception of the princess he felt so sure of winning her. 1 year had passed away in weary waiting, and still his man did not return with the dragon jewel. The knight became desperate. He could wait no longer. So taking with him only 2 men, he hired a ship and commanded the captain to go in search of the dragon. The captain and the sailors refused to undertake what they said was an absurd search, but the knight compelled them at last to put out to sea. When they had been but a few days out, they encountered a great storm, which lasted so long that by the time its fury abated, the knight had determined to give up the hunt of the dragon. They were at last blown on shore, for navigation was primitive in those days. Worn out with his travels and anxiety, the fourth suitor gave himself up to rest. He had caught a very heavy cold and had to go to bed with a swollen face. The governor of the place, hearing of his plight, sent messengers with a letter inviting him to his house. While he was there, thinking over all his troubles, his love for the princess turned to anger, and he blamed her for all the hardship he had undergone. He thought that it was quite probable that she had wished to kill him so that she might be rid of him, and in order to carry out her wish, had sent him upon his impossible quest. At this point, all the servants he had sent out to find the jewel came to see him and were surprised to find praise instead of displeasure awaiting them. Their master told them that he was heartily sick of adventure and said that he never intended to go near the princess's house again in the future. Like all the rest, the fifth night failed in his quest. He could not find the swallow's shell. By this time, the fame of Princess Moonlight's beauty had reached the ears of the emperor, and he sent one of the court ladies to see if she were really as lovely as report said. If so, he would summon her to the palace and make her one of the ladies in waiting. When the court lady arrived, in spite of her father's entreaties, Princess Moonlight refused to see her. The imperial messenger insisted, saying it was the emperor's order. Then Princess Moonlight told the old man that if she was forced to go to the palace in obedience to the emperor's order, she would vanish from the earth. When the emperor was told of her persistence in refusing to obey his summons, and that if pressed to obey she would disappear altogether from sight, he determined to go and see her. So he planned to go on a hunting excursion in the neighborhood of the bamboo cutter's house and see the princess himself. He sent word to the old man of his intention, and he received consent to the scheme. The next day the emperor set out with his retinue, which he soon managed to outride. He found the bamboo cutter's home and dismounted. He then entered the house and went straight to where the princess was sitting with her attendant maidens. Never had he seen anyone so wonderfully beautiful, and he could not but look at her, for she was more lovely than any human being as she shone in her own soft radiance. When Princess Moonlight became aware that a stranger was looking at her, she tried to escape from the room, but the emperor caught her and begged her to listen to what he had to say. Her only answer was to hide her face in her sleeves. The emperor fell deeply in love with her and begged her to come to the court, where he would give her a position of honor and everything she could wish for. He was about to send for one of the imperial palanquins to take her back with him at once, saying that her grace and beauty could adorn a court, and not be hidden in a bamboo cutter's cottage. But the princess stopped him. She said that if she were forced to go to the palace, she would turn at once into a shadow, and even as she spoke, she began to lose her form. Her figure faded from his side while he looked. The emperor then promised to leave her free, if only she would resume her former shape, which she did. It was now time for him to return, for his retinue would be wondering what had happened to their royal master when they missed him for so long. So he bade her goodbye and left the house with a sad heart. Princess Moonlight was for him the most beautiful woman in the world. All others were dark beside her, and he thought of her night and day. His Majesty now spent much of his time in writing poems, telling her of his love and devotion, and sent them to her, and though she refused to see him again, she answered with many verses of her own composing, which told him gently and kindly that she could never marry anyone on this earth. These little songs always gave him pleasure. At this time her foster parents noticed that night after night the princess would sit on her balcony and gaze for hours at the moon, in a spirit of the deepest dejection, ending always in a burst of tears. One night the old man found her thus weeping as if her heart were broken, and he besought her to tell him the reason of her sorrow. With many tears she told him that he had guessed rightly when he supposed her not to belong to this world, that she had in truth come from the moon, and that her time on earth would soon be over. On the 15th day of that very month of August, her friends from the moon would come to fetch her, and she would have to return. Her parents were both there, but having spent a lifetime on the earth, she had forgotten them, and also had the moon world to which she belonged. It made her weep, she said, to think of leaving her kind foster parents and the home where she had been happy for so long. When her attendants heard this, they were very sad and could not eat or drink for sadness at the thought that the princess was soon to leave them. The emperor, as soon as the news was carried to him, sent messengers to the house to find out if the report were true or not. The old bamboo cutter went out to meet the imperial messengers. The last few days of sorrow had told upon the old man. He had aged greatly and looked much more than his 70 years. Weeping bitterly, he told them that the report was only too true, but he intended, however, to make prisoners of the envoys from the moon, and to do all he could to prevent the princess from being carried back. The men returned and told his majesty all that had passed. On the 15th day of that month, the emperor sent a guard of 2,000 warriors to watch the house. 1,000 stationed themselves on the roof. Another 1,000 kept watch round all the entrances of the house. All were well-trained archers with bows and arrows. The bamboo cutter and his wife hid Princess Moonlight in an inner room. The old man gave orders that no one was to sleep that night. All in the house were to keep a strict watch and be ready to protect the princess. With these precautions and the help of the emperor's men at arms, he hoped to withstand the moon messengers. But the princess told him that all these measures would keep her with would be useless, and that when her people came for her, nothing whatever could prevent them from carrying out their purpose. Even the emperor's men would be powerless. Then she added with tears that she was very, very sorry to leave him and his wife. whom she had learned to love as her parents, that if she could do as she liked, she would stay with them in their old age and try to make some return for all the love and kindness they had her upon showered upon her during all her earthly life. The night wore on. The yellow harvest moon rose high in the heavens, flooding the world asleep with her golden light. Silence reigned over the pine and the bamboo forests, and on the roof where the 1,000 men-at-arms waited. Then the night grew grey towards the dawn, and all hoped that the danger was over, that Princess Moonlight would not have to leave them after all. Then suddenly the watcher saw a cloud form round the moon, and while they looked, this cloud began to roll earthwards. Nearer and nearer it came, and everyone saw with dismay that its course lay towards the house. In a short time the sky was entirely obscured, till at last the cloud lay over the dwelling only 10 feet off the ground. In the midst of the cloud there stood a flying chariot, and in the chariot a band of luminous beings. One amongst them, who looked like a king and appeared to be the chief, stepped out of the chariot and, poised in the air, called to the old man to come out. "The time has come," he said, "for Princess Moonlight to return to the moon from whence she came. She committed a grave fault, and as a punishment was sent to live down here for a time. We know what good care you have taken of the princess, and we have rewarded you for this, and have sent you wealth and prosperity. We put the gold in the bamboos for you to find. I have brought up this princess for 20 years, and never once has she done a wrong thing. Therefore the lady you are seeking cannot be this one," said the old man. "I pray you to look elsewhere." Then the messenger called aloud, saying, "Princess Moonlight, come out from this lowly dwelling. Rest not here another moment." At these words, the screens of the princess's room slid open of their own accord, revealing the princess shining in her own radiance, bright and wonderful and full of beauty. The messenger led her forth and placed her in the chariot. She looked back and saw with pity the deep sorrow of the old man. She spoke to him many comforting words, and told him that it was not her will to leave him, and that he must always think of her when looking at the moon. The bamboo cutter implored to be allowed to accompany her, but this was not allowed. The princess took off her embroidered outer garment and gave it to him as a keepsake. One of the moon beings in the chariot held a wonderful coat of wings. Another had a phial full of elixir of life, which was given the princess to drink. She swallowed a little and was about to give the rest to the old man, but she was prevented from doing so. The robe of wings was about to be put upon her shoulders, but she said, "Wait a little. I must not forget my good friend the Emperor. I must write him once more to say goodbye while still in this human form." In spite of the impatience of the messengers and charioteers, she kept them waiting while she wrote. She placed a phial of elixir of life with the letter, and giving them to the old man, she asked him to deliver them to the emperor. Then the chariot began to roll heavenwards towards the moon, and as they all gazed with tearful eyes at the receding princess, The dawn broke, and in the rosy light of day, the moon chariot and all in it were lost among the fleecy clouds that were now wafted across the sky on the wings of the morning wind. Princess Moonlight's letter was carried to the palace. His Majesty was afraid to touch the elixir of life, so he sent it with the letter to the top of the most sacred mountain in the land, Mount Fuji, and there the royal missionaries burnt it on the summit at sunrise. So to this day, people say there is smoke to be seen rising from the top of Mount Fuji to the clouds.
Wow.
That was
Also,
deep,
a long story.
almost a full hour.
Yeah. Also, I think Furry just found out that the video quality is a bit weird today. And also,
No,
Doctor isn't here.
that's unusual, but it can happen.
And it seems that the entire screen feed is crap.
All right, so there's no more video.
No, 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 there's a bit of it. Give me a second.
Mm.
Trying to revive it. Not seeming to work. Nope, it refuses to get the screen stuff.
Yeah. I was very curious to find out how this long story would end. With the 5 nights and, why are there five?
Because it's needed for the story.
Yeah, apparently.
Well, the most important part is that people are seeing you.
No, the most important part is that they hear me, and I think that is going well.
I think so too. And maybe the screen will get a bit.
Yeah.
It's okay.
All right, then I'll be moving on to the next story.
Please do.
And I hope it's not going to be another hour, but we'll see. The Mirror of Matsuyama, a story of old Japan. Long years ago, in old Japan, there lived in the province of Echigo, a very remote part of Japan even in these days, a man and his wife. When this story begins, they had been married for some years and were blessed with one little daughter. She was the joy and pride of both their lives, and in her they stored an endless source of happiness for their old age. What golden letter days in their memory were these that they had marked her growing up from babyhood. The visits to the temple when she was just 30 days old, her proud mother carrying her, robed in ceremonial kimono, to be put under the patronage of the family's household god. Then her first dolls festival, when her parents gave her a set of dolls and their miniature belongings to be added as year succeeded year. And perhaps the most important occasion of all, on her third birthday, when her first OBI or obi, broad brocade sash of scarlet and gold was tied round her small waist. Ah, obi, a sign that she had crossed the threshold of girlhood and left infancy behind. Now that she was 7 years of age and had learned to talk and to wait upon her parents in those several little ways so dear to the hearts of fond parents, their cup of happiness seemed full. There could not be found in the whole of the island empire a happier little family. One day there was much excitement in the home, for the father had been suddenly summoned to the capital on business. In these days of railway and jinring- jin, jinrickshaws and other rapid modes of traveling, it is difficult to realize what such a journey as that from Matsuyama to Kyoto meant. The roads were rough and bad, and ordinary people had to walk every step of the way, whether the distance were 100 or several hundred miles. Indeed, in those days it was great an undertaking to go up to the capital, as it is for a Japanese to make a voyage to Europe now. So the wife was very anxious while she helped her husband get ready for the long journey, knowing what an arduous task lay before him. Vainly she wished that she could accompany him, but the distance was too great for the mother and child to go, and besides that, it was the wife's duty to take care of the home. All was ready at last, and the husband stood in the porch with his little family round him. "Do not be anxious. I will come back soon," said the man. "While I am away, take care of everything, and especially of our little daughter." "Yes, we shall be all right. But you must take care of yourself, and delay not a day in coming back to us," said the wife, while the tears fell like rain from her eyes. The little girl was the only one to smile, for she was ignorant of the sorrow of parting, and did not know that going to the capital was at all different from walking to the next village, which her father did very often. She ran to his side and caught hold of his long sleeve to keep him for a moment. "Father, I will be very good while I am waiting for you to come back, so please bring me a present." As the father turned to take a last look at his weeping wife and smiling, eager child, he felt as if someone were pulling him back by the hair, so hard was it for him to leave them behind, for they had never been separated before. But he knew that he must go, for the call was imperative. With a great effort he ceased to think, and resolutely turning away he went quickly down the little garden and through the gate. His wife, catching up the child in her arms, ran as far as the gate and watched him as he went down the road between the pines till he was lost in the haze of the distance, and all she could see was his quaint peaked hat, and at last that vanished too. "Now father has gone, you and I must take care of everything till he comes back," said the mother, as she made her way back to the house. "Yes, I will be very good," said the child, nodding her head. "And when father comes, please tell him how good I have been, and then perhaps he will give me a present." "Father is sure to bring you something that you want very much. I know, for I asked him to bring you a doll. You must think of father every day and pray for a safe journey till he comes back." "Oh, yes, when he comes home again, how happy I shall be," said the child, clapping her hands, and her face growing bright with the joy at the glad thought. It seemed to the mother, as she looked at the child's face, that her love for her grew deeper and deeper. Then she set to work to make the winter clothes for the three of them. She set up her simple wooden spinning wheel and spun the thread before she began to weave the stuffs. In the intervals of her work, she directed the little girl's games and taught her to read the old stories of her country. Thus did the wife find consolation in work during the lonely days of her husband's absence. While the time was thus slipping quickly by in the quiet home, the husband finished his business and returned. It would have been difficult for anyone who did not know the man well to recognize him. He had traveled day after day, exposed to all weathers, for about a month altogether, and was sunburned to bronze. But his fond wife and child knew him at a glance, and flew to meet him from either side, each catching hold of one of his sleeves in their eager greeting. Both the man and his wife rejoiced to find each other well. It seemed a very long time to all till, the mother and child helping, his straw sandals were untied, his large umbrella hat taken off, and he was again in their midst, in the old familiar sitting room that had been so empty while he was away. As soon as they had sat down on the white mats, the father opened the bamboo basket that he had brought in with him, and took out a beautiful doll and a lacquer box full of cakes. Here, he said to the little girl, is a present for you. It is a prize for taking care of mother and the house so well while I was away. Thank you, said the child as she bowed her head to the ground, and then she put out her hand just like a little maple leaf with its eager widespread fingers to take the doll and the box, both of which, coming from the capital, were prettier than anything she had ever seen. No words can tell how delighted the little girl was. Her face seemed as if it would melt with joy, and she had no eyes and no thought for anything else. Again the husband dived into the basket and brought out this time a square wooden box, carefully tied up with red and white string, and handing it to his wife said, "And this is for you." The wife took the box, and opening it carefully, took out a metal disc with a handle attached. One side was bright and shining like a crystal, and the other was covered with raised figures of pine trees and storks, which had been carved out of its smooth surface in lifelike reality. Never had she seen such a thing in her life, for she had been born and bred in the rural province of Echigo. She gazed into the shining disk and looked up with surprise and wonder picture on her face. She said, I see somebody looking at me in this round thing. What is it that you have given me? The husband laughed and said, Why, it is your own face that you see. What I have brought you is called a mirror, and whoever looks into its clear surface can see their own form reflected there. Although there are none to be found in this out of the way place, yet they have been in use in the capital from most ancient times. There the mirror is considered a very necessary requisite for a woman to possess. There is an old proverb that as the sword is the soul of the samurais, so is the mirror the soul of the woman. And according to popular tradition, a woman's mirror is an index of her own heart. If she keeps it bright and clear, so is her heart pure and good. It is also one of the treasures that form the insignia of the emperor, so you must lay great store by your mirror and use it carefully. The wife listened to all her husband told her and was pleased at learning so much that was new to her. She was still more pleased at the his token of remembrance while he had been away. If the mirror represents my soul, I shall certainly treasure it as a valuable possession, and never will I use it carelessly. Saying so, she lifted it as high as her forehead in grateful acknowledgment of the gift, and then shut it up in a box and put it away. The wife saw that her husband was very tired and set about serving the evening meal and making everything as comfortable as she could for him. It seemed to the little family as if they had not known what true happiness was before. So glad were they to be together again. And this evening the father had so much to tell of his journey and all he had seen at the great capital. Time passed away in the peaceful home, and the parents saw their fondest hopes realized as their daughter grew from childhood into a beautiful girl of 16. As a gem of priceless value is held in its proud owner's hand, so had they reared her with unceasing love and care, and now their pains were more than doubly rewarded. What a comfort she was to her mother as she went about the house taking her part in the housekeeping, and how proud her father was of her, for she daily reminded him of her mother when he had first married her. But alas! In this world nothing lasts forever. Even the moon is not always in perfect shape, but loses its roundness with time, and flowers bloom and then fade. So as at so at last the happiness of this family was broken up by a great sorrow. The good and gentle wife and mother was one day taken ill. In the first days of her illness the father and daughter thought it was only a cold and were not particularly anxious. But the days went by, and still the mother did not get better. She only grew worse, and the doctor was puzzled, for in spite all he did, the poor woman grew weaker by day. The father and daughter were stricken with grief, and day or night the girl never left her mother's side. But in spite of all their efforts, the woman's life was not going to be saved. One day, as the girl sat next to her mother's bed, trying to hide with a cheery smile the gnawing trouble at her heart, the mother roused herself, and taking her daughter's hand, gazed earnestly and lovingly into her eyes. Her breath was labored, and she spoke with difficulty. My daughter, I am sure that nothing can save me now. When I am dead, promise me to take care of your dear father and to try to be a good and dutiful woman. Oh, mother, said the girl as the tears rushed to her eyes, you must not say such things. All you have to do is make haste and get well. That will bring the greatest happiness to father and myself. Yes, I know, and it is a comfort to me in my last days to know how greatly you long for me to get better. But it is not to be. Do not look so sorrowful, for it was ordained in my previous state of existence that I should die in this life, just at this time. Knowing this, I am quite resigned to my fate, and now I have something to give you whereby to remember me when I am gone. Putting her hand out, she took from the side of the pillow a square wooden box tied up with a silken cord and tassels. Undoing this very carefully, she took out of the box the mirror that her husband had given her years ago. When you were still a little child, your father went up to the capital and brought me back as present this treasure. It is called a mirror. This I give you before I die. If, after I have ceased to be in this life, you are lonely and long to see me
Whoa.
sometime. Hello. I am reading a very sad part of the story. Welcome, Raiders.
Welcome, Raiders.
Hello.
That's
We're,
the
we're we're just at the scene where the mother is dying, so great timing.
great timing indeed. And why oh why did Phil just dropped in when there's the most horrible quality we have
Oh,
during the stream yet?
oh, yeah. Everything seems to be going, I don't know, haywire. We don't know why it is. Sound seems to be okay, but all images just terrible, terrible, terrible. So,
QR code talking. Yes. So welcome viewers to a sad story where there's someone dying. Let's go.
so the QR code tells of the sad death of the mother. Well, I hope you had a good stream and enjoyed, and I'll see if I'm gonna make you cry. Let's see. Where was I? Uh, oh yeah. I'll summarize. The mother is giving her daughter a mirror, and the mirror. Um, they have never had a mirror. They don't know what it is. This is the only mirror ever. So it's treated as if it's a magical item. And perhaps it is in this story. We don't know. But it's considered to be the soul of a woman, like a sword is the soul of the samurai. So we're going to see what this mirror is going to do for the daughter who receives it. But first, let's kill off this mother. Now let's watch. No, there's no good way to put this, but let's go on with it. Let's see. When you were still a little child, your father went up to the capital and brought me back as a present this treasure. It is called a mirror. This I give you before I die. If, after I have ceased to be in this life, you are lonely and long to see me sometimes, then take out this mirror, and in the clear and shining surface you will always see me. So will you be able to meet with me often and tell me all your heart. And though I shall not be able to speak, I shall understand and sympathize with you, whatever may happen to you in the future. With these words, the dying woman handed the mirror to her daughter. The mind of the good mother seemed to be now at rest, and sinking back without another word, her spirit passed quietly away that day. The bereaved father and daughter were wild with grief, and they abandoned themselves to their bitter sorrow. They felt it to be impossible to take leave of the loved woman who till now had filled their whole lives, and to commit her body to the earth. But this frantic burst of grief passed, and then they took possession of their own hearts again, crushed though they were in resignation. In spite of this, the daughter's life seemed to be desolate. Her love for her dead mother did not grow less with time, and so keen was her remembrance that everything in daily life, even the falling of the rain and the blowing of the wind, reminded her of her mother's death and of all that they had loved and shared together. One day, when the father was out and she was fulfilling her household duties alone, her loneliness and sorrow seemed more than she could bear. She threw herself down in her mother's room and wept as if her heart would break. Poor child! She longed for just one glimpse of the loved face, one sound of the voice calling her pet name, and for one moment's forgetfulness of the aching void in her heart. Suddenly she sat up. Her mother's last word had rung through her memory, hitherto dulled by grief. My mother told me when she gave me the mirror as a parting gift that whenever I looked into it, I would be able to meet her, to see her. I had nearly forgotten her last word. How stupid I am! I will get the mirror now and see if it can possibly be true. She dried her eyes quickly and going to the cupboard, took out the box that contained the mirror. her heart beating with expectation as she lifted the mirror out and gazed into its smooth face. Behold, her mother's words were true. In the round mirror before her, she saw her mother's face. But, oh, the joyful surprise! It was not her mother, thin and wasted by illness, but the young and beautiful woman as she remembered her back in the days of her own earliest childhood. It seemed to the girl that the face in the mirror must soon speak, almost that she heard the voice of her mother telling her again to grow up a good woman and a dutiful daughter. So earnestly did the eyes in the mirror look back into her own. It is certainly my mother's soul that I see. She knows how miserable I am without her, and she has come to comfort me. Whenever I long to see her, she will meet me here. How grateful I am ought to be. And from this time, the weight of sorrow was greatly lightened for her young heart. Every morning, to gather strength for the day's duties before her, and every evening, for consolation before she laid down to rest, did the young girl take out the mirror and gaze at the reflection which, in the simplicity of her innocent heart, she believed to be her mother's soul. Daily she grew in the likeness of her dead mother's character, and was gentle and kind to all, and a dutiful daughter to her father. A year spent in mourning had thus passed away in the little household, when, by the advice of his relations, the man married again, and the daughter now found herself under the authority of a stepmother. It was a trying position, but her days spent in the recollection of her own beloved mother, and of trying to be what that mother would wish her to be, had made the young girl docile and patient, and she now determined to be filial and dutiful to her father's wife in all respects. Everything went on apparently smoothly in the family for some time under the new regime, where there were no winds of waves of discord to ruffle the surface of everyday life, and the father was content. But it is a woman's danger to be petty and mean, and stepmothers are proverbial all the world over, and this one's heart was not as her first smiles were. As the days and weeks grew into months, the stepmother began to treat the motherless girl unkindly, and to try and come between the father and the child. Sometimes she went to her husband and complained of her stepdaughter's behavior, but the father, knowing that this was to be expected, took no notice of her ill natured complaints. Instead of lessening his affection for his daughter, as the woman desired, her grumblings only made him think of her the more. The woman soon saw that he began to show more concern for his lonely child than before. This did not please her at all, and she began to turn over in her mind how she could, by some means or other, drive her stepchild out of the house. So crooked did the woman's heart become. She watched the girl carefully, and one day, peeping into her room in the early morning, she thought and she discovered a grave enough sin of which to accuse the child to her father. The woman herself was a little frightened too at what she had seen. So she went at once to her husband, and wiping away some false tears, she said in a sad voice, "Please give me permission to leave you today." The man was completely taken by surprise at the suddenness of her request, and wondered whatever was the matter. "Do you find it so disagreeable," he asked, "in my house, that you can stay no longer?" No, no, it has nothing to do with you. Even in my dreams, I have never thought that I wish to leave your side. But if I go on living here, I am in danger of losing my life. So I think it best for all concerned that you should allow me to go home. And the woman began to weep afresh. Her husband, distressed to see her so unhappy, and thinking that he could not have heard all right, said, "Tell me what you mean. How is your life in danger here?" "I will tell you since you ask me. Your daughter dislikes me as her stepmother. For some time past she has shut herself up in her room morning and evening, and looking in as I pass by, I am convinced that she has made an image of me and is trying to kill me by magic art, cursing me daily. It is not safe for me to stay here, such being the case. Indeed, I must go away. We cannot live under the same roof any more." The husband listened to the dreadful tale, but he could not believe his gentle daughter guilty of such an evil act. He knew that by popular superstition people believed that one person could cause the gradual death of another by making an image of the hated one and cursing it daily. But where had his young daughter learned such knowledge? The thing was impossible. Yet he remembered having noticed that his daughter stayed much in her room of late, and kept herself away from everyone, even when visitors came to the house. Putting this fact together with his wife's alarm, he thought that there might be something to account for the strange story. His heart was torn between doubting his wife and trusting his child, and he knew not what to do. He decided to go at once to his daughter and try and find out the truth. Comforting his wife and assuring her that her fears were groundless, he glided quietly into his daughter's room. The girl had for a long time past been very unhappy. She had tried by amiability and obedience to show her goodwill and to mollify the new wife, and to break down that wall of prejudice and misunderstanding that she knew generally stood between step-parents and their step-children. But she soon found that her efforts were in vain. The stepmother never trusted her, and seemed to misinterpret all her actions, and the poor child knew very well that she often carried unkind and untrue tales to her father. She could not help comparing her present she could not help comparing her present unhappy condition with the time when her own mother was alive only a little more than a year ago. So great a change in this short time. Morning and evening she wept over the remembrance. Whenever she could, she went to her room, and sliding the screens to took out the mirror and gazed, as she thought, at her mother's face. It was the only comfort that she had in these wretched days. Her father found her occupied in this way. Pushing aside the fusama, he saw her bending over something or other very intently, looking over her shoulder to see who was entering her room. The girl was surprised to see her father, for he generally sent for her when he wished to speak to her. She was also confused at being found looking at the mirror, for she had never told anyone of her mother's last promise, but had kept it as a sacred secret of her heart. So before turning to her father, she slipped the mirror into her long sleeve. Her father, noting her confusion and her act of hiding something, said in a severe manner, "Daughter, what are you doing here? And what is that you have hidden in your sleeve?" The girl was frightened by her father's severity. Never had he spoken to her in such a tone. Her confusion changed to apprehension, her color from scarlet to white. She sat dumb and shamefaced, unable to reply. Appearances were suddenly against her. The young girl looked guilty, and the father, thinking that perhaps, after all what his wife had told him was true, spoke angrily. Then is it really true that you are daily cursing your stepmother and praying for her death? Have you forgotten what I told you? That although she is your stepmother, you must be obedient and loyal to her? What evil spirit has taken possession of your heart that you should be so wicked? You have certainly changed, my daughter. What has made you so disobedient and unfaithful? And the father's eyes filled with sudden tears to think that he should have upbraided his daughter in this way. She, on her part, did not know what he meant, for she had never heard of the superstition that by praying over an image it is possible to cause the death of a hated person. But she saw that she must speak and clear herself somehow. So she loved her father dearly and could not bear the idea of his anger. She put out her hand on his knee depreciately, deprecate, deprecately, somethingly. Father, father, do not say such dreadful things to me. I am still your obedient child. Indeed, I am. However stupid I may be, I should never be able to curse anyone who belonged to you, much less pray for the death of one you love. Surely someone has been telling you lies, and you are dazed, and you know not what you say, or some evil spirit has taken possession of your heart. As for me, I do not know. No, not so much of a dewdrop of the evil thing of which you accuse me. But the father remembered that she had hidden something away when he first entered the room, and even his earnest protest did not satisfy him. He wished to clear up his doubts once for all. Then why are you always alone in your room these days? And tell me, what is that you have hidden in your sleeve? Show it to me at once. Then the daughter, though shy of confessing how she had cherished her mother's memory, saw that she must tell her father all in order to clear herself. So she slipped the mirror out from her long sleeve and laid it before him. This, she said, is what you saw me looking at just now. Why? He said in great surprise. This is the mirror that I brought as a gift to your mother when I went up the capital many years ago. And so you have kept it all this time? Now why do you spend so much of your time before this mirror? Then she told him of her mother's last words, and how she had promised to meet her child whenever she looked into the glass. But still the father could not understand the simplicity of his daughter's character in not knowing that what she saw reflected in the mirror was in reality her own face and not that of her mother. What do you mean? He asked. I do not understand how you can meet the soul of your lost mother by looking in the mirror. It is indeed true, said the girl, and if you don't believe what I say, look for yourself. And she placed the mirror before her. There, looking back from the smooth metal disc, was her own sweet face. She pointed to the reflection seriously. Do you doubt me still? She asked earnestly, looking up into his face. With an exclamation of sudden understanding, the father smote his two hands together. How stupid I am! At last I understand. Your face is like your mother's, as the two sides of a melon. Thus you have looked at the reflection of your face all this time, thinking that you were brought face to face with your lost mother. You are truly a faithful child. It seems at first a stupid thing to have done, but it is not really so. It shows how deep has been your filial piety and how innocent your heart. Living in constant remembrance of your lost mother has helped you to grow like her in character. How clever it was of her to tell you to do this. I admire and respect you, my daughter, and I am ashamed to think that for one instant I believed your suspicious stepmother's story and suspected you of evil, and came with the intention of scolding you severely, while all this time you have been so true and good. Before you I have no countenance left, and I beg you to forgive me. And here the father wept. He thought of how lonely the poor girl must have been, and of all that she must have suffered under her stepmother's treatment. His daughter steadfastly keeping her faith and simplicity in the midst of such adverse circumstances, bearing all of her troubles with so much patience and amiability, made him compare her to the lotus, which rears its blossom of dazzling beauty out to the slime of mud and the moats and ponds, fitting emblem of a heart which keeps itself unsullied while passing through the world. The stepmother, anxious to know what would happen, had all this while been standing outside the room. She had grown interested, and had gradually pushed the sliding screen back till she could see all that went on. At this moment she suddenly entered the room, and dropping to the mats, she bowed her head over her outspread hands before her stepdaughter. I am ashamed! I am ashamed! She exclaimed in broken tones. I did not know what a filial child you were. Though no fault of yours, but with a stepmother's jealous heart, I have disliked you all the time. Hating you so much myself, it was but natural that I should think you reciprocated the feeling, and thus when I saw you retire so often to your room, I followed you, and when I saw you gaze daily into the mirror for long intervals, I concluded that you had found out how I disliked you, and that you were of revenge trying to take my life by magic art. As long as I live, I shall never forget the wrong I have done you in so misjudging you, and in causing your father to suspect you. From this day I throw away my old and wicked heart, and in its place I put a new one, clean and full of repentance. I shall think of you as a child that I have borne myself. I shall love and cherish you with all my heart, and thus try to make up for all the unhappiness I have caused you. Therefore, please throw into the water all that has gone before, and give me, I beg of you, some of the filial love that you have hitherto given your own lost mother. Thus did the unkind stepmother humble herself, and ask forgiveness of the girl she had so wronged. Such was the sweetness of the girl's disposition that she willingly forgave her stepmother, and never bore a moment's resentment or malice towards her afterwards. The father saw by his wife's face that she was truly sorry for the past, and was greatly relieved to see the terrible misunderstanding wiped out of remembrance by both the wrongdoer and the wronged. From this time on, the three lived together as happily as fish in the water. No such trouble ever darkened the home again, and the young girl gradually forgot that year of unhappiness in the tender love and care that her stepmother now bestowed on her. Her patience and goodness were rewarded at last. Wow, this was a real happy ending.
I expected at least some modicum of vengeance or something like ha ha ha.
These stories have all ended in such weird ways that I didn't truly not suspect a happy ending to be part of this collection of stories.
I guess it's very important as a woman to be beautiful and look at yourself, and then everything will be
Yeah,
okay.
that's in all these stories. And somehow, There's always something about boxes with ribbons around them.
Yeah. Mm. Boxes with ribbons around them. Pandora's boxes. It's okay. Just open it. It's okay.
Yeah. Some well, in these stories so far, the good things have come from the boxes.
Hmm. True. In this case, some form of happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with that, I think we have reached the end of this stream. Two stories.
Only two this time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit
But
different from the Peter Rabbit stories, right?
yeah, but these were long stories.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So, next Sunday there won't be a Foxes and Coffee as per usual because,
We are at facts.
yeah, we are at Fax. So, if you want to see us, come visit us at the booth at Fax. There's a post soon on our Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
I
If you're
should,
in Belgium,
yeah. If you're in Belgium or close by, we're over there in real life, and well, we'll see you there, I think. And probably next Wednesday again, though we don't know what for
yes.
stream it will be yet.
No, but we'll definitely decide before it starts.
5 minutes before, yes.
Yeah.
So, to the ones still hanging around here after the raid, thank you for viewing the last part of the story. This kind of stream we do every 2 weeks ish. Um,
Yes.
and
And
we'll see.
we're right now reading Japanese fairy tales. So there's a big collection of them left. So in 2 weeks or maybe next Wednesday or I don't know. Probably some weeks from now we will continue with a story of oh that's nice. I'm going to this is going to become a challenge.
Yes, if you want to see Reninsi talk in a goblin voice, visit us next time in another Cats and Coffee. For now, thank you for being here. Again, my apologies for the crappy video quality, though it seemed to have recovered in the last bit, so I guess even our
All
ISP
right,
has
nice.
said something like, oh yeah, well, why not? Let's do it full.
The mothership has left.
The mothership has left. Yeah, maybe it's going back to your place now. Anyway, have a good evening, all. Thank you, stay safe, and to the ones being at FAX next Sunday or Saturday, see you then.
All right, see you Sunday
Bye
or
bye.
next time.